I attend about a dozen game conventions each year. Mostly my role is news editor at Board Game Geek, and since I'm at those shows in that role, game publishers often show me advanced copies or mock-ups of games that they plan to release in the future, hoping that if they show me, I will end up showing you. And I do that as much as I can. I'll write descriptions, paragraphs, a little bit about games, publish it on the BG News blog, I'll post photos on Twitter, we'll schedule game demo, presentation on camera at that convention or some other show. We'll put something out, and often that's my only experience of a game. I will just remember seeing it. I wrote something up, and then I'm done. It just goes out of my mind completely because I move on to something else. There's thousands of games coming out, and so I'm kind of sampling, grabbing as much as I can as they fall from the sky, and then showing them off to you. So hopefully you can find something that you like. I just move on to something else. But every so often, I do get to go back and get a closer look at something that I saw many months earlier. So at Gen Con 2018, Simon was showing a mock-up of Wacky Races, the board game, which is based on an animated series that came out in 1968, the year I was born. I have never seen this show, but this game now exists. Apparently there's a nostalgia for it, or it exists for some reason. There was only 17 episodes of this series. I looked up some history about it, just curious about why Simon would make a game based on this. I recognize this character, but it's only because they did sort of a knockoff of this character for Laugh Olympics, a separate Hanna-Barbera series that did not have the exact same owners as Wacky Races, so the dog went from being Muttley to being Mumbly. And Dick Dastardly, who's in the car with Muttley, well, he became someone else. Dirty Baron, I think that's what it was. It was weird looking up all the history on this. It was kind of fascinating trying to imagine all the little machinations behind the scenes of how we want to use these characters again and tie in with this nostalgia for this new animated series. And yet, because of the ownership, we have to do other things and hope we just wink at people and they'll get it. Because Laugh Olympics came out 10 years after, and that's something I did watch. That is not this game, though. This game is based on something I have no connection to except for it being a racing game. I like racing games. So, thought I'd look at this design by Andrea Caravizio and Fabio Tola. That's for 2 to 6 players. Plays in only 20 minutes. That's the playing time listed on the box, and it's pretty accurate. Let's take a closer look. Here's a sample track layout for Wacky Races, the board game. You have 6 cars behind the starting line. You have the first half of the track composed of 8 terrain tiles. Terrain comes in 4 different colors or types, and you have 2 copies of each. You shuffle them, lay out those cards, follow it by a gas station, take 2 more copies of those cards along with 1 of 4 special cards. You just shuffle them at random, add 1 to the terrain tiles, shuffle those terrain tiles, lay them out, and end it with the finish line. Whoever reaches this finish line first wins the game. You always have 6 cars in play, no matter the number of players. So this space would be occupied by the starting player, player 2, player 3, and once the number of players runs out, let's say we have only 4, then you fill the last slots with neutral cars that will move following certain rules. Players are going to move in Wacky Races mostly by playing terrain cards from their hand. The cards come in 4 types, which match the types of terrain on the track, as you might expect. You must play at least 1 card on a turn, and you may play up to 3, after which you will fill your hand up to 3 cards once again. The first card that you play each turn can be any landscape type, and you will move ahead 1 space. It's a gimme to keep you having some sort of forward progress during the game, and allow you to flush your hand and get better things in the future. The second card you play has to match the terrain where you are located, although in this case, the 2 starting locations along with the gas station and most of the special tiles can be matched by anything that you play. So I'll play this red card, it matches this space, I go ahead to the next empty location, because each spot on the track can have up to 2 cars, 1 on each side of it. If I can play a purple, which I can, then I move ahead 1 more space, and then I refill my hand to 3 cards to end my turn. After my turn, Dick Dastardly and Muttley, occupying the car at the back, moves to the first empty space that matches the top card on the discard pile. Jumping up ahead here. So the next player goes, and if they can play anything they want, if they play a purple, they will move ahead, and since these 2 spots are already occupied, they will jump ahead to this location. If you had the purple on the top, Dick Dastardly now goes to the next purple spot, and when Dick Dastardly ends up ahead of everyone else, he lays a trap down on that space for someone to hit later, and then retreats to the back of the pack. Doesn't care about winning, just wants to cause chaos. That's a quick summary of the gameplay. Play 1 to 3 cards, moving ahead 1 to 3 spaces, possibly a little extra if you're hopping over fully occupied spaces, and then Dick Dastardly sweeps up to whatever you last played. The first player to land next to a trap reveals that card and carries out its effect, which is typically negative for the player who revealed it, or positive for everyone else, which of course is kind of a net negative for the player who revealed it. However, you might be able to cancel the trap instead of carrying it out. Each player has a small player board with 4 special power cards on it that are specific to that player. In this case, Penelope Pitstop has these 4 cards. One card that each player has cancels 2 types of traps. There's about a half dozen different traps in the game, and Penelope Pitstop has a card that cancels an oil trap or another type of trap. So I flip this card face down, the oil trap doesn't affect me, so other players do not get to move forward at my expense. Regardless of whether the trap takes effect or not, you remove that card from play and continue the race. If I ended my turn here, then Dick Dastardly goes ahead to the next green space. The flow of the game continues player Dick Dastardly, until you get to the end of the second run of play, at which point the neutral cards start to move, and they will move at the end of each subsequent round once you get back to the starting player of the game. The neutral players move by drawing cards from the deck, and it creates some havoc and uncertainty for your future turns. First, all the neutral players move up 1 space. You then reveal a card from the deck. If they're on that type of terrain, then they move forward 1 space just as if they had played that card from their hand. You then do that a second time and a third time. Here we got the green, so now this advances here, this advances here, and that's the end of the neutral cards, and now we will start again with Penelope Pitstop taking her turn. Aside from the trap canceling card, each player has 3 other special cards. One of those cards is the same for all 10 racers, no matter who you are, and that is to discard up to 3 cards and then draw that many cards. So a little card filter to hopefully find what you need at the right time. The other 2 cards are all unique for each individual player, and they provide a variety of skills that you might expect, apparently often based on the characteristics of these characters from the animated series, as one player relayed to me. You might be stealing cards from other players, or moving them back, or swapping places with them, or just moving ahead. Maybe you flip a card at random and you see if it matches the terrain you're on. All sorts of different powers that you can imagine were you to try to design a game along these lines. You just imagine all the different possibilities for the bonuses that people might have. That's most of those special powers. Players keep taking turns moving, and when the last player, whether neutral or an actual player, reaches the gas station, then all racers get to unexhaust, that is regain, one of their special powers. So now I can again switch places with a player who's up to 2 spaces away from me. Once you get past the gas station tile, the only difference in the second half of the race is the appearance of a special tile. There's one of 4 that's shuffled in among the other 8 and laid out, and one of them will possibly put a trap ahead of people. Another lets players swap terrain tiles. There's another one where the player in last place moves up 1 space as people land on it. There's the swamp. Any number of people can land in that, and to get out of the swamp, you have to play a matching pair of terrain tile cards or 3 different cards, which at worst you'll have at the start of your turn. So at worst you have to end in the swamp, you refill your hand, and you will meet one of those conditions at the start of your turn. You might have a larger hand size based on your special powers that lets you pull cards from the discard pile or just draw extra cards, take them from other people, do something like that. So maybe you can get past the swamp, but at worst it's just like a 1-turn speed bump. That's kind of the flow of the game itself. It feels like a series of speed bumps where you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 4. If I jump over people, but often then I create something that other people are going to jump over. And you just get this sort of monotonous leapfrogging as people move through. There's no breakaways. There's no sort of difference in the feel of the game from start to finish. You play cards and you just advance through things. And it's a big difference from other race games. So I've played Wacky Races 3 times now, twice with 2 people, once with 5 people. The games felt the same each time. And with 2 people, you have the addition as well where I play some number of cards. Okay, we'll do something, move. And then the opponent does something, and I wait for them. Oh, and then we got the neutral players. Oh, move everyone up 1, and we flip over a card, and we flip over another card, we flip over another card, and then Dick Dastardly moves. So my portion of activity in the game is pretty minimal compared to all the other stuff going on, where it just feels like I'm not participating that much. I'm not doing that much. I'm not planning that much because your hand is limited to 3. At most, you're going to play those 3. Okay, maybe you have, again, a larger hand size, but at most you play 3, and then you refill your hand. If I play everything, I can play nothing for the next turn. I just take whatever cards are given to me, and maybe I'll only be able to move ahead 1 space. Possibly I go more. Okay. If I can only move 1 or 2, well, then I'll have a card left in hand, but it's a card I don't really want because I couldn't use it to move ahead. So next turn, that could be the trash I throw away to move ahead 1 space, and then I have to hope I draw other things. And you have the special powers that kind of get you out of things, but it just is, it's very different in feel and not what I would want to see in a racing game, or not what I'm sort of familiar with or expect to see, where you have some possibility of long-range planning or an expectation of building towards something, building towards bigger moves or a difference, a flow in the race. All right, the acceleration and deceleration is you have different parts of the track that you encounter, or roadblocks with other opponents, or something going on. So a Formula Day, you've got the die rolls where you're going to change gears to go higher or lower in the die, which is going to give you different speeds. And you plan ahead for that. As you're going into a turn, you want to decelerate and not break the speed limit. Then you want to come out of it and go up again. And so you're looking ahead and trying to thinking what you can do turns ahead of time. Or with downforce, where you are playing cards that are going to move 1 or more cars in the race. And hopefully you're trying to time or maneuver certain things so that a certain card will be useless for this color because that car is owned by an opponent. I don't want to move them. So hopefully we can plan things to work out where that car doesn't move. Or I got the right opportunity. Now I can ditch it and just, in your face, and I scoot ahead. Or Ave Caesar, where you've got a hand of 3 cards, but the cards have different movement values. So you have choices over whether you want to just plod or race or jump in front of someone and create a roadblock. There's some sort of difference in there. Breaking Away, fantastic racing game that's not widely known, but completely deterministic, where you set speed values for each of your racers, and then the replacement value is based upon where you are in the pack. All right, you try to draft off other people, which will increase your speed. And so you have choices over what you're going to do and when you're trying to break away or go with the pack or keep your riders together to impact each other. Unpacking my house, I just found this old game, Formel Fun, 20-year-old race game, not well known, not much to it. And yet even that as well has those elements where you have some cards that are playable only for 3, but if you're on the right spot on the track, because the track has values from 1 to 10 repeated multiple times, if I play an 8 on any space other than an 8, I only go 3. If I play it on an 8, I move ahead 8 spaces. So you're trying to manipulate your hand and work off other people in order to accelerate. And that game has the added value where you do multiple laps. And at the end of each lap, whoever is in last place gets thrown out. You have multiple cars, and you're just trying to not be last. You try to save your momentum for the right time. When you desperately need to, you push ahead so that someone else will fall off the track. You get another chance. Maybe you'll get the right things. You'll be able to push ahead of people. So all of those games have this flow to the nature of gameplay, which more mimics the activity that you would think of seeing in a race, where you reserve your strength and then you push ahead. You make those breakaway moments. And Wacky Races Just has the and then it ends. You say, well, I guess this is what they wanted to do. I guess the designers and the publisher wanted this shorter play experience, this 20-minute playing time, and yet it comes down to very limited feeling of racing because it's so slow and there's no differentiation between the beginning and the end, and there's no planning, and it just sort of happens as you move around the table, and then you win. And you're like, man, those minis are really cool. What's next?